All right, welcome everyone to another 21-minute live event. And joining me today is Bobby Brill, Director of Project Management at Salesforce, and one of the biggest experts that I know of when it comes to Einstein Analytics. This guy has helped me so much in my journey, and he joins me today in our quest to Salesforce responsibly. And this time, we're here to answer a couple of key questions about building your model in Einstein Discovery. So, hey, Bobby, how you doing?
Doing all right, Eric. Thanks for having me. This is really exciting to talk through this.
Yeah, for those that don't know, I first met you on a Salesforce Saturday. Actually, we shared
Yep.
together, and this I feel like it was only a couple of months ago, and like it's been such a journey for me in analytics from there on. But let's get going because we only have a limited amount of time. Save that for another one. So listen, I want to talk to you about models. I have part of my journey. One of the biggest piece has been how to build a proper Salesforce model. I think I've started, as most people probably start, by just putting every single field in a blender and seeing what Einstein Analytics spits out. And I quickly realized, that that's just not the case. So listen, when we're building data sets and models, should I filter out records that have not reached their terminal state? Is there a specific place that you should filter those out, and how should we go about that?
I think that's an excellent question, and I think it really brings us to what does Einstein Discovery do best, right? It's what it is, and it's. I remember when I first saw it. So first off, I've been using Salesforce for over 12 years, and been at the company for over 9, and just I love data and analyzing data. And Salesforce comes out with like Einstein. It says it's going to solve everything. Well, it's not. It's got to learn from what you've already done. So it's not this magic box that's just making predictions for you. It learns from your historical data, and historical is really that key word there. What Einstein Discovery does is it focuses on outcomes. An outcome is what happened to a piece of data. So if it's a lead, when that lead converted, that lead's done. We call that the terminal state. So it analyzes those records that have hit the terminal state. If you pass the data that hasn't hit that terminal state, there's nothing for it to learn from. It might look at a value. It might think that it hit a terminal state, like a lead that is still open is technically not converted, but you don't want that. You don't want the model to think that these attributes are leading towards leads not converting. So if it hasn't finished it, you should completely get rid of that data. And within, so Einstein Discovery lives within what's now called, as of a couple of weeks ago, TableauCRM, which is still Einstein Analytics with a new name. Einstein Discovery did not get a new name. And we have the complete sort of package there. We have a whole data manager layer where you can very easily kind of work with your data and filter your data. So the biggest challenge with building a model is going to be on that data layer. So you definitely want to get rid of those records that haven't hit the terminal state.
Okay. And is there a specific place that you should do it? Because I feel like sometimes I've seen the option when you're deploying the model, they can try to filter out there, or like when you're building the recipe or you're on data prep. Should you do it right at the data prep and take them out, or what's
There's
the best way
actually
to go?
two places. There's two places that you could do it. You could do it at the data layer. So within data prep, whether it's the new Winter 21 experience, which I think everyone should be using, it's amazing, or the old data flow approach, which if you've been using the product back when it was called Wave Analytics, like and love data flows, you've learned all the ins and outs. You're like, no, I'm good with this. There's filtering capabilities there, which you could do, but there's also filtering capabilities within the setup of Einstein Discovery. So you can drill into a field, you can remove certain things, like let's say I have a simple, I always use this example, opportunities, because I feel like that's the key reason people are using Salesforce is for tracking their sales. So your opportunity is either open or it's closed. And you could go, and there's a field, it's called, closed, true, false. You see it on reports today, it's one of the standard fields you have on reports. You can go into the setup and actually click in that close field, uncheck the true, close true, and filter out those values. So you can do that directly from the story. And it really depends on your data. So customers have big control on their data. So big enterprise customers, in fact, Salesforce is a good example. I cannot create a data flow or recipe in our internal org. So I use the filtering and discovery because that's all I have. I can't control that data. But if it's a smaller shop, or you're in control of that data, by all means do it right at that data.
Gotcha.
Oh, the last part you mentioned on filtering at the model deploy, that's a completely different type of filtering. In fact, that's more on having model segments to better support your business case. And we can go into that in a little bit, but it's sort of a separate topic. So the deploy one is not actually filtering your data.
That's fair. And again, a good highlight to bring up, because at least for me, first time I was looking at it, there was the question of, do I filter here or there? And sometimes it can be confusing, and it might take a couple of tries until you understand how that's coming along. I guess the next question then, and this is one that I heard a lot of questions like this when I was trying to find an answer for it myself. So when you're using related records to help make your prediction, is it better to point the model to the lookup field? So if we're in opportunities, is it better to point up to just point to the account ID and let analytics do the rest? Or should I point to the criteria for that account? So instead of pointing to the account lookup as the field, I'm looking at the account industry, the account type, and other criteria, or employees, revenue. What's the better way to go about it here?
That's a great question, and really, what a machine learning technique, and I think one of the biggest pitfalls I see customers doing is they don't quite understand that when you're building a predictive model, you need to bring in this account profile. So we don't want to necessarily look at the exact account. We want to look at the attributes of the account that could be similar to other accounts. So the idea is, if I have an opportunity, a new opportunity, the question on whether it's going to win or not probably depends on the type of account that is related to that. Not that it's specifically, let's say you're selling to Salesforce, so not specifically that it's Salesforce, but more specifically that it's in high-tech industry, or it's a SaaS-based company. Something like that is actually more important. And the reason is because we're actually, when we take the data into the model, all we see is this field value has this correlation to the outcome. So we're specifically looking at values, as opposed to, if you pass us an ID, all we know is it's an ID. And one of the limitations of discovery is, if it's a text field, we can only look at 100 of the unique categories, and then everything else falls into this other bucket. So
Right.
If you were to point at an ID immediately, like account ID, and I see this all the time, everyone's like, I want the account. And what I try to tell them is, no, you actually want an account profile. So pull in that type, pull in that industry, number of employees, and then think about aggregating some fields, like how many times has this account won a deal? How long has this account been a customer? And these are things that we actually built into some of our new templates that we put into the Winter 21 release. So if you're looking to build, kind of get best practices to build a model for opportunity win rate or opportunity time to close, there's an out of the box thing that you can do. We're going to build those. It's called feature engineering. We're going to do all that for you, and it highlights kind of those best practices.
Yeah, I've seen some of those templates. I highly recommend it for anybody that is listening in. I mean, they're just a great way to hit the ground running if you're just diving into to Einstein discovery. I mean, we joke around. We say here, with great power comes great responsibility, and that is the literal definition of discovery. Because if you just dive in head first, there's just so much of playing around that you'll have to do to learn and get familiar with it. Whereas with some of these templates, you really get to have a guided understanding of, how these things are put together, and really be able to go to market much quicker, right, with the investment that the company is making
Absolutely.
in the Einstein. So yeah, I 100%, I think that those templates are fantastic, and there are multiple ones. It's not just, how do I
Yep.
help my company increase my revenue. There are several different ones in there, which highly recommend people take a look at it. We're talking a little bit now. We talked about post-terminal state data. I want to come back to it and ask, how does one manage the inclusion of post-terminal state data? So any values that we don't have yet that we genuinely believe may actually influence an opportunity. So like something that we can try to use to help understand if it's going to be on the right path or not. Like I don't know if payment method, but maybe a closed reason, right?
Yep.
To kind of be able to understand if how can we include that in a prediction, and should we include it at all, or should we just avoid it at all costs?
Right. So that's another pitfall that I see customers doing is they're including fields in their predictive model that you don't have at the time that you actually want to make the prediction. Now, should you include those in Einstein Discovery is really dependent on what you're using Einstein Discovery for. The original product that we brought to market, it came through an acquisition of this company, BeyondCore, that did this really great kind of analysis and told you, here's your data, here's all the things that happen with your data. So it was really a deep dive analysis and automated kind of discovery of your historical data. Now, when you're looking at it from that lens, for the stuff that's already kind of happened, there are some insights in there. So it's absolutely useful. Let's say it's you're looking at opportunities that won, and you might look at, I don't know, something with the orders. I don't know, you might pick, an order happens after the one of the opportunity. Well, there could still be some insights that are interesting to you. You want to look at the statistics, you want to kind of see those things. But when we're talking a predictive model, you always have to think of it from the terms of, I want to know if I have a new opportunity or an opportunity that's still open, what is the information I have that I can tell the model that we can then make a prediction from? So it's really important to think of it from that perspective. Think of it from, when I want this prediction, here's the information that I have. And this is why the most important kind of persona to be involved here is someone that really knows that data. Because someone, again, I always use the opportunity use case, but someone from sales operations that really they know all the pieces from, open deals to closed deals, all the things they're reporting on, they know what data is there. So they have to be in the room to be able to decide, do I include this field or not? They might not be a data scientist, that's totally fine, but they can make the decision on, is this a field that we should analyze or not? Einstein Discovery will figure out if that field is actually have some predictive signal. But the most important thing is to know which fields to include or not.
Okay.
From that perspective.
And that's helpful, but is there coming back to the very first question, is there something we need to be in consideration if we're filtering out our post-terminal state events? Is there something that we need to take in consideration for this data that would come only after the fact? Because how would we include that? Even if we had that information, or we try to predict or forecast some of that information, how do we manage that? Is there a key way, or are we getting too advanced for a 20-minute conversation?
No, it's honestly, I don't think there's a best practice other than one, it's really easy to remove something from a model. So we make it really easy. You have a story. The story can look at up to 50 columns. You have this story setup. You can go and uncheck a column, update the story. It'll create a new version. And then you can deploy a new model version. So all those things are very, very simple. It might take, depending on your data volumes, it might take a while to reanalyze, but all those things should be fairly simple to do. And what I've seen actually working with customers, what they've done is they'll have a field. They don't realize that they shouldn't have that field yet until they deploy it. And then when they want to actually wire it up to their Salesforce data, they realize, I don't have this data.
Right.
So there's nothing I can connect it to. So the only option is, okay, go back to that story, remove it, rerun it, redeploy it. So that's kind of how. So it's, it's somewhat trial and error, but I think if you know the data really well, you should be able to make that determination ahead of time.
I
So
can,
like, again, you
yeah.
got to really be that expert on the data.
Yeah, I can echo that sentiment. And right before we went live, we were talking about this, right? It's there is a trial and error approach that helps you get much more familiar with how each individual component affects it. Okay. What about like if I wanted to take an average? So I ran into this one particular scenario where trying to correlate into an opportunity since we're there, but let's say we wanted to calculate a recommendation or a prediction on how many licenses a customer would need to add on. So you have an existing customer, it's an add-on opportunity, and the customer purchases so many licenses every couple of months, add-on licenses, whatever, and you want to run a prediction on that. You don't have the number yet of licenses, or you're trying to predict what that would be, but you have all the past historical data of how many licenses they've purchased on a certain time period. I ran into a similar situation. What I was trying to resolve it with was that I was taking an average of what those amounts were, like how many they've purchased in the last 12 months, let's say,
Yep.
and try to add that average to my model.
Mm-hmm.
I want to hear your take on it. I'll just preface the final piece of it that one of the things that I did notice was that I lost the seasonality of it, because in my model, I have a close date consideration. And if someone bought a lot of licenses way in the past and just few licenses recently, the average lost that amount. So
Yep.
that was one learning lesson I had, but I want to hear from your side if there's a strategy to pursue there with similar situations.
This one's really tough. Like this one, I think you've gotten to the more advanced data science type, solutions to this.
Okay.
So first off, it's there's many ways to tackle this. So if we're looking at, like, if you want that seasonality, then you got to break down that average across different dimensions. So instead of looking at just the overall average, you might look at average in the last year, average in 1 year before, or maybe even make that a 6-month window and then another 6-month window. So this is we just built a template on maximize customer revenue, which is ideally it was supposed to be customer lifetime value. There's so many different ways to do customer lifetime value. There's all these. So I read all these blogs and papers on how to do it. And this is one of the things they actually talk about, is looking at number of orders in the last month, 2 months ago, 3 months ago. It totally depends on the use case. So, do you care that there was a bunch of purchases 10 years ago? Probably not. If we're talking about how business is changing, you might want to only focus on the last 1 year or the last 6 months even, and try to get those trends. So again, I don't have a good answer other than, the average could work, but you might get better signal if you break that down even further.
Yeah. I'll just share again. I don't have a perfect answer. It's something that I've trialed and error a lot with in the last couple of weeks, and it's always interesting to get someone else's opinion. For anyone listening, my only takeaway is that you have to, when you're taking averages, you have to take a decision on how far back you want to go. So
Yeah.
I was doing a lot of things on the last 12 months, and I realized that some of the factors that I was trying to predict change very often. So I had to adjust my average calculation to only within the past 90 days, and to try to get a better vision into my predictions. And even still, it's been a bit of a love-hate relationship with these averages, because you take that entire seasonality out, and you're trying to figure out a way to make it work. So it's interesting. All right. Listen, final question that we have, and it was just a curiosity of mine. I think a lot of people have the same curiosity. what's the purpose of having multiple active versions of a model? And like, because there's a ranking system, and how does that work, and how does one manage that?
It's a great question. So this actually touches on one of the first things you were talking about on filtering. Do I filter at the model deploy level? And this at the model deploy level, this is where you can set up your model segments. So this is where you don't necessarily want the same model to control all the segments of your data. So if you're looking at deals, well, if a deal is going to win, the question is it an enterprise deal? Is it a small business deal? Is it a middle market? You might want to actually have specific models for those segments. So what we allow you to do with Discovery is you might create a prediction for likelihood to win, and then you could then create 3 separate models for that. So if it's an enterprise deal, use model 1. If it's a middle market, use model 2. And if it's a small business, use model 3. So the model segmentation allows you to do that. And so when you deploy, the way the segmentation works is you say, here's a filter. So if the record that we're predicting matches this filter, use the model. If not, you try the next one. If not, try the next one. So there's not a guarantee that every record will have a model. You might not want to score every record also. You might want to only apply it to certain things.
So it's funny. So that's kind of like the record types of.
Absolutely.
There we go.
Love it.
That's it.
I never thought of it that way, but that's the best way to put it. I love it.
No, it's funny because I swear this wasn't intentional, but it kind of does come full circle with what that filter was there for, if not for filtering out the terminal state data. So, I don't think we could have planned this one better if we tried. All right.
Love it. Record time.
Yeah,
Like this is I'll forevermore explain it that way.
There we go. So the biggest takeaway here. Listen, we're right at our time. I wanted to give a big shout out to the Data Tribe guys that are listening in. I saw a couple of comments in there from Prabhat and Gian, and really appreciate everyone joining in. Bobby, I'm not sure if you have any final thoughts or comments, anything you want to say, but I really appreciate you for this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, my comment is when we met a few months ago on that Salesforce Saturday, I feel like you didn't know anything about Discovery. And in just a few months, maybe it was like, I don't know, 4 months, whatever, it looks like it's clicked. So, I think my message for everyone else is you might not think you know how to use it. The second you start like digging into it on a use case of data that you really know, it's going to click. And I think, I really want everyone to use it and see the value. So it's awesome.
Yeah, I'll definitely wrap up on that. I've been fortunate enough, and I'll put the link below for anybody that's interested if anyone's a fan of Formula One. But I took a personal project to get some experience with analytics, and the excitement of the project on its own has been awesome because it's helped me really try to navigate, and having a purpose when you're trying to build something really helps that out. And definitely accelerated my my learning. I'm definitely still very much on a long trail, but but beyond that, people like yourself, I definitely want to give a couple of shout outs. I know Gian has helped out, Lucas Ribeiro has helped out, Pete Lyons has been instrumental. There's a lot of people that have helped me on my journey, and I'm really thankful for the Ohana that effect that definitely lives on very strong within everyone at the in the Data Tribe community. So listen, I'll wrap it up as we always wrap up. With great power comes great responsibility. So until next time, I hope everyone gets the opportunity to build some awesome solutions. Thank you, Bobby, and we'll catch everyone up on the next one.
All right, thanks, Eric.
All right,
take it easy.
See ya. Bye. So I'll stop in 1 second. Yeah. All right.